Hello students, welcome back to Concept Design class. The theme for this class is going to be Pumpkin George. Before I begin the tutorial with a demonstration, here are a choice of recommended drawing tools. So whether you decide that you just want to use charcoal or graphite pencil, that is absolutely fine. Whatever you're most comfortable with and you think you're going to enjoy this, go for it. Here was my final drawing that you're going to see for this demonstration. So that's a road map. You can see I'm using a 2-point perspective. It took me, I think, about an hour to figure this out. And important influence. I went on the internet, looked at a lot of images relevant to pumpkins and used those. Here I am getting charcoal on my hands so there's no grease. I've already washed my hands, but making sure there's no grease or dirt on your hands so I'm not smudging the page. Now, what I'm starting with here is the 2-point perspective, the horizon line first. One of the vanishing points is outside of the picture plane. And what you're all used to here is starting the grid. Remember, be gentle with your pressure. Don't press too hard, please. Okay, because you're going to be drawing over the top of that. Don't hold the drawing implement, the pencil or the crayon or the charcoal too hard. There's no need for that. Be relaxed and just be confident. Look to where the line's headed through that point. Don't follow the journey of your hands. You remember all those things in class. So try to keep relaxed and look to where the line is headed, okay? Do not follow your hand with your eyes. Now I'm going to pick up a piece of carbon, compressed charcoal, put it where one of my points are so it's easy for my eye to look at that and draw a line from it. So that's what I was doing there. And now you can see it. The points, the lines are not converging on that left side because they're going to that piece of charcoal outside the picture plane, unlike the point, vanishing point to the right. So I'm drawing a lot of lines here for my grid. We've got longer to work on this than the hour I normally give you when you're at CTEC. So you can spend a little longer on this, but just remember, I stress, don't press too hard the lines for these grids because you're going to be drawing shapes over the top of them. So what I'm going to draw now is the plan view on the floor, just to work from those plan views at the angle there. And then when you've got those basic shapes set on the floor, those plan views, you can work up the axes that are going vertical, straight up, okay? So like so, just go straight up. Don't get confused. They don't lean, they're not falling down. They're going, you're trying to draw them so they go straight up. And then you can start to fill in the angles once you've got that volume, once you've got things going up. Now I'm leaning the line, I'm curving the line a little bit, then that shows age as opposed to trying to be exactly straight. So by putting curves in, I'm showing that the gravity and forces of nature are kind of trying to pull that structure down. So hence the little bit of a curve on the line, and plus it gives a lot of character. And now I'm going for the roof, and you can see I've tried to get the middle part of the box. And then once again, the tops of the roof, everything's angled and bending. It shows age, and it shows the force of gravity trying to push that down. Putting a chimney on the house, again, start with that simple box shape and then break up the shape once you've got those basic cube shapes. And you notice the line also is a little heavier than what I did for the grid. So try to get variety in your line. Do not be drawing with the same pressure all the way through your drawing, because it looks boring and there's no life and energy about it. So vary that line. And also try to think is, another thing is, I'm initially blocking this out, but I'll go back over those lines again, maybe soften some of those lines, depending on where the direction of light is and how far in the distance. So you can see me smudging over again to soften it. Now when I start to draw more lines on top of that, you can see it's almost like an X-ray as well. I'm seeing right through that shape. So you're only seeing vectors, you're only seeing those lines, and that makes it a lot easier to get the perspective as best you can. Okay, and there I'm trying to think about the windows and doors and things like that, and again softening that line. That's the advantage there. Regardless if you're using charcoal or a graphite pencil, I use my finger a lot, and that's why it's really important when you're smudging to make sure your fingers tips don't have any grease or any moisture on them, because that will create a horrible stain or mark, grease stain on the paper, and it's hard to work with once that happens. So try to remember that. Always keep your hands clean. And you can see I'm trying to get thicknesses to doorways there, so you can see that the door itself is inset through the doorway. Now I'm trying to think about the features that you would have on this roof. If you're curious as to the type of look I'm trying to get here for the type of architecture, I always think back to where I spent a lot of my days out in the countryside drawing architecture and drawing landscape, and it was usually in the north of Ireland, near Belfast, along a county down. So that's I'm going reverting back to things that I've almost got as muscle memory, these shapes. So I'd encourage you, when you do your elements that you want to include in this grid, is to think about maybe Oregonian farming architecture, the things that you're much more close to. So please don't copy what I'm doing on this. This is just to give you a guide and encourage you to enjoy this project and think about what you want to draw. So you have that creative freedom, but you are using the system of 2-point perspective, which is Cartesian perspective. So you can see I've tonally made the windows and door entrances a lot darker. That gives it a lot of contrast, thickening up the lines on the roof a little bit. Now here I want to think about things that will be left around outside the farm. Look at how I did that shape there. I just did the ellipse on the ground first, and then the highest point of that little roll that's used to wrap a tube around it that they put under the ground for all sorts of things. And there's going to be an area for a fence and a gate besides the wall of the farmhouse. And again, I'm not pressing too hard, but it's a little harder again than the grid line. So that grid's starting to recede because these elements that I'm drawing over the top of that grid are becoming more and more prominent. That things we're noticing more, but we still have that structure underneath. you know, and now I'm thinking about the pumpkins. Where are they going to grow on the ground? I want loads of pumpkins here. And you notice as they go further back, those shapes, they get smaller. Okay, so be conscious of that. Things when they're closer are bigger. Things when they go further back are smaller. So quickly block those in. Don't spend too much time on detail ever. You have to keep moving your hand. Now I start to build the volume of those pumpkin shapes coming out from those ovals or ellipses which are on the ground. Quickly and efficiently keep your hand dancing around. Keep it dancing around. Don't spend too long on any one area, and it starts to ruin it if you spend too much detail in one little area. Oh, there's pumpkins on this side as well. We want loads of pumpkins on this farm. Yeah, where I grew up, we didn't really get pumpkins. We had turnips. So this is well, I don't know if you could. I'm sure you could grow them in there. It's just not so much a thing, but they do look cool, don't they? Yeah. And the detail now for the way the pumpkin shapes are on the outside, I'm also getting the feeling of that shape, aren't I, of that volume by drawing those little lines. So keep your hands skipping over the area. Don't spend too long. You might not always get the shapes right first time, but you just have to keep traveling your hand through. And now smudging to get the idea of shade on this. And then I'll start working on that area again. So again, don't be frightened to do that, because I know a lot of you are worried that you're ruining it if you smudge over the top because you're told not to smudge. Well, do a lot of smudging. It's a lot of fun too. Your hands are going to get dirty being a designer. So now I'm going back over again. You can see it's starting to look more three-dimensional, isn't it? And so you could see the process here. You notice how much darker they are when they're closer. So I've pressed a lot harder on those objects which are closer to us, and it really gives the illusion that they're of depth, that we're in a three-dimensional space. So things that are closer are going to have a heavier line. So now I'm trying to do bits of greenery that would go around those pumpkins. I'm just making stuff up here. I really don't know what shape of vegetation grows around them, so I'm just trying to create a little bit of visual interest, and you can have fun with those shapes. A lot of them are like kind of little motifs. I do that a lot in my work as I'm trying to find a rhythm. And now there's our scarecrow that I'm going to be put on this, and surprise, surprise, he's going to have a pumpkin head. Yes. Now this might be a George pumpkin scarecrow. Who knows? And I want to make the pumpkin a happy pumpkin. Really lift the mood here. Keep it interesting. So I'll come back to its expression, get back to the pumpkins, trying to stay busy. You notice I've done a little bit of the pumpkin, blocked out the shape, gone back to them. Same with the scarecrow. Didn't spend too long on it, just block in those basic shapes. Remember, macro. Work big shapes first, then you can go down to smaller detail, but don't spend too long. Just keep moving around so that your eye is making sure that nothing's getting too much attention or too little attention. You just have to keep your eye moving around the page. You notice some of the textures on the brickwork that I've added in the house. That helps give it character and the idea of age. Refining the lines a little bit. Those window ledges are a little bit iffy. Maybe I'll probably come back to them. And again, smudge. I want a little bit more strength there in the shadow on the side of the wall that's closest to us. That gives it a little bit of depth, doesn't it? So always trying to bring this idea of depth and a three-dimensional quality within that picture plane. Just strengthen this depth of shadow up inside the interior. Now there could be lights on in there. I mean, I might come back to that and play with that. Now there's different rakes and different implements, spades against the side of the wall. That gives it visual interest. The tiny little props that you're adding to the scene means there's something else to look at for the viewer. So these tiny little things that you add, these tiny little props help. And let's have some birdies on the pumpkin, which means that scarecrow is not a good scarecrow. He is not frightening those blackbirds around the pumpkin. So that adds a little bit of an interesting story, I guess, dichotomy. That's a big word for the day. We're going to use dichotomy. In other words, kind of opposites happening. That scarecrow should be scaring those crows, but it's not, because I reckon he's buddies with those crows. They're just kind of hanging around. Maybe they like the scarecrow and the scarecrow likes them. So I don't think they're going to destroy the pumpkins. Maybe. Yeah, so I've neglected these ones on the right side, these pumpkins, so get back to them. Again, I'm just throwing in the shapes fairly quickly, just trying to get the shape of those ovals and circles, and now the edge of that path there. So let's add some texture to the road here, and you notice they're still following the grid to show as the vehicle tracks get closer to us, they get wider as they come closer and more detail as they get closer. I'm trying to smudge here and get variation of soft marks and hard marks on the road. The little cross hatching bits to show the tread of the tractor tire or car tire. And so this is a lot of almost experimenting, that there's not one way to do this. It's not a secret way to do this. I'm going to use stronger, thicker marks there with the charcoal. Back to the pumpkin. Yeah, let's not get too carried away just with the road. Let's try and keep it evened out. And my eraser, the eraser to show the highlight bits of the tread. So I'll be using the eraser a lot from now on to try and get variation of lights and dark. So I'm using the eraser really like a paintbrush. So don't be scared to experiment with marks. Don't be worrying about it looking right, about things looking nice and about things looking right. There's some puddles to show water that's built up on the track as well. That creates some interesting variation. The little water ripples maybe I've added, maybe little bits of wind catching the surface of the water, and now going to a crow maybe taking a drink. Again, these types of little things, when you have these actors within the picture, help add story and intrigue for the viewer. So with those types of things, it keeps it interesting for the viewer because they're wondering what's going on and what the creature's doing, etc. Again, back to my pumpkins. So you see, I'm not spending too long on anything. And you notice they're getting stronger and they look more detailed. And again, just dancing the drawing implement around that picture. And the water, I'm kind of leaving gaps out, and I'm just adding scribbles and scratches now. I'm not sure if this is going to work, and I can always just rub it with my hand if it doesn't. So again, I encourage you to take risk, be adventurous, and if it doesn't quite look right, just rub it with your hand. Smiley Pumpkin George, yeah. See, look, isn't he cute? See, he's smiling, that he's happy. He's having a great time there. He's talking to his buddies, the crows. Yeah, they're chatting away to him, and yeah, he's catching up on all the gossip. You know what the farmhands have been up to. Yeah, and probably just appreciating the view in the scenery. Yeah, probably needs to get a new wardrobe at some point. I'd say he's a bit disheveled there. You know, probably complaining about the fashion sense of the chaps who've dressed him. I'm using white chalk here on top, over the top of the pumpkin, and that gives a very interesting quality, doesn't it? And just having little highlights on the top of those crows to make them stand out a bit. And you know, those cottages and farmhouses in Northern Ireland, a lot of them they have these white walls. And there again, back to the pumpkins using the side of my finger. So I'm constantly experimenting and trying different effects out. I'm always learning. I want you to know I'm always trying different things out. You notice the harder lines on the edges there, but they're not all the same thickness all the way around. So some of those lines are thicker, some of them are thinner, and some of them I just smudged them out completely. Now, a bit of attention on the objects closest to us once again. I want the highest contrast in the pumpkins, the lights in the darkest areas. And again, it creates the feeling that they're close to us. So we're creating that illusion of 3 dimensions on a flat piece of paper. And this is what's always fascinated me with this. Adding more texture to the ground. I'm not too sure really about what to put on the ground around the pumpkins. My vegetation's kind of disappeared that I did at the beginning, and this is just part of the process. You know, I'll come back to that and hopefully try and figure it out, but it is certainly looking interesting with the tone and the scratches and scribbles on the page. I think a lot of drawing and people who start off this is they always want things to be neat and tidy, and that's not how you're going to create an interesting picture. So a lot of this concept art has to be fast, okay? So the nature of what we're doing here is really thinking, you know, for a studio, what types of things are they looking for, and what are they demanding, and one of them is speed. So part of your apprenticeship here is really thinking, how can I get faster and more efficient? So be prepared to make lots of mistakes. I encourage you to do that. Very, very important, because it's the best artists in this business are the ones who make more mistakes than anybody else. And what they do from those mistakes is they learn, and the next one they do, it'll improve and get better. So please, encourage you, really have fun with this, okay? It's part of the learning process. And again, you know, I'm just dancing the drawing implements, in this case my charcoal, around different parts of the drawing. I'm not spending too long on any one part, just giving Pumpkin George a little bit of Pumpkin George the Scarecrow a little bit of texture there, and I'm not sure where to totally go with that either. I'll come back to it later on when I figured it out. So don't feel the pressure to get any one bit right at the beginning. You can always get back to it later, right? Then my little chimney needed a little bit of definition there on the farm, and again I'm just tightening things up and seeing a little bit more contrast there on the side. That really brings out the edge of the house, right? Or the extension. It's pushing that forward. So again, in the sky, you know, the sky needs a lot of work, I guess, and it's okay. And again, just keep moving your hand around the surface. Just keep having fun with this. Now those gate posts really need more attention. Okay, a sideless fence, a bit more definition. That'll make them more part of the scene. I don't want to be too much detail because they are further away. And now outlining the highlights with the chalk on the water a little bit more, I think, is important here. Again, little bits of moisture on the mud that's been created with all that traffic coming through. Again, moving around the sky, you know, just making the edge of that roof on the extension pop, right? With that negative space behind. So really think about the negative spaces when you're dealing with your props, your houses, or your people or your animals or whatever objects are in the scene, you're always trying to think about what's a negative space behind that. How do I make it look as if it's more three-dimensional and coming forward? So these are all things that are going to help. But again, you know, we're going for speed. Those trees, I don't know, that I had at the beginning, I've just botched those over. Not, maybe I might come back and revive them. His top of his head needs a bit more detail here. And again, just keep moving around. Now, I'm trying to get a little bit of intrigue, like there's light somewhere inside the building that's catching the inside edge of the insets for where the windows go, and these little bits of picks of light inside the window create intrigue, and this character I'm doing now creates a little bit of mystery. And that's the thing about your scene, is you're always trying to, like say, hook the viewer in to go, what's that, what's this? You want his eye moving around, and I call them story hooks. So your crows, the scarecrow, now there's a character appeared in the window, you know, there's lights inside the cottage, and you know, is it what sort of cottage is it? You know, is it a family in there? Is it just a for storing thing? I mean, and there's a little light on the outside over the door, and it just, that little bit of detail gets the viewer to look. So obviously that's an entranceway, and then putting the light cast from that onto the floor creates a little bit more texture and a little bit more contrast. And going back again with the chalk inside that. With graphite, you would just use your eraser and just make it lighter in that area. So that's the thing about whether it's graphite, whether it's charcoal, is you can just create these very similar effects, so just with a different look. And that's what's really a lot of fun about concept, is different tools create different effects. Okay, so I kind of think that's enough for this part of basically creating our environment. And well, I'd like to put a little time-lapse summary together which shows this over a period of just 1 minute. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.